Hello, fellow Americans. I'm Al Reason, the voice of reason, on this Monday, June 28, 2010, day 70 of Obama's oil disaster. On Thursday, I reported that other events were knocking the oil disaster off the news, so I didn't do a Friday update. Little was reported about it, but the same judge who lifted the oil drilling moratorium denied allowing it to continue while the government drafted another challenge to the lawsuit. Thank you. A report from the Financial Post on June 26 gave out more information on the denial of foreign help with the oil disaster. Excerpts from this article by Lawrence Solomon stated, 3 days after the BP oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico, which began on June 20th, the Netherlands offered the U.S. government ships equipped to handle major spills, one much larger than the BP spill that then appeared to be underway. The Dutch could provide ships with more cleanup capability than all the ships the U.S. was then employing in the Gulf to combat the spill. To protect against the possibility that its equipment wouldn't capture all the oil gushing from the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico, the Dutch also offered to prepare for the U.S. a contingency plan to protect Louisiana's marshlands with sand barriers. One Dutch research institute specializing in deltas, coastal areas, and rivers, in fact, developed a strategy to begin building a 60-mile-long sand dike within 3 weeks. This seems to me to be what Louisiana Governor Bobby Jindal proposed. Continuing with the article, the Dutch know how to handle maritime emergencies. In the event of an oil spill, the Dutch government, which owns its own ships and high-tech skimmers, gives an oil company 12 hours to demonstrate it as the spill in hand. If the company shows signs of unpreparedness, the government dispatches its own ships to the oil company's expense, at the oil company's expense. If there is a country that's experienced with building dikes and managing water, it's the Netherlands. In sharp contrast to the Dutch preparedness before the fact and the Dutch instinct to dive into action once an emergency becomes apparent, witness the American reaction to the Dutch offer to help. The U.S. government responded with no thanks, but no thanks, That's according to the Dutch Consul General in Houston. Despite BP's desire to bring in the Dutch equipment, and despite the no-lose nature of the Dutch offer, the Dutch government offered the use of its equipment at no charge. Our government refused to accept the help. Even after the U.S. refused, the Dutch kept their vessels on standby, hoping the Americans would come around. By May 5th, the U.S. had still not come around. To the contrary, the U.S. had turned down offers of help from 12 other governments, much of them with superior expertise and equipment. Unlike the U.S., Europe has robust fleets of oil spill response vessels that sail circles around their makeshift U.S. counterparts. Ironically, the superior European technology runs foul of the U.S. environmental rules. The Dutch vessels, for example, continuously suck up vast quantities of oily water, extract most of the oil, and then spit overboard vast quantities of nearly oil-free water. Nearly oil-free isn't enough for U.S. regulators, who have a standard of 15 parts per million. If water isn't at least 99.9985% pure, it may not be returned to the Gulf of Mexico. When ships in U.S. waters take oil-contaminated water on board, they are forced to store it. Admiral Allen, the official in charge of the cleanup operation, explained in a press conference on June 11th, "We have skimmed to date about 8 million gallons of oily water. The water has to be decanted from that. Our yield is usually somewhere around 10 or 15% of that." In other words, U.S. ships have mostly been removing water from the Gulf, requiring them to make up to 10 times as many trips to storage facilities where they offload their oil-water mixture. The Americans, overwhelmed by the catastrophic consequences of the BP spill, finally relented and took the Dutch up on their offer. Only partly, though. Because the U.S. doesn't want Dutch ships working in the Gulf, the Jones Act supposedly, the U.S. airlifted the Dutch equipment to the Gulf and then retrofitted it to the U.S. vessels. And rather than have experienced Dutch crews immediately operate the oil skimming equipment to appease labor unions, the U.S. postponed the cleanup operation to allow U.S. crews to be trained. The Jones Act again. During the Exxon Valdez, the Dutch sent people to assist us as well. They were also denied any use of their equipment. No lessons learned, America. So until the next time, this is Al Reason, the voice of reason.